from don't make it out. I know that I'm blessed. There's a few L's and millions, so turn that loss to a chance.
Welcome to the show, brother.
Great to be here.
So, if it's okay with you, I don't want to steal your thunder. I want you to introduce yourself as well. But we have Mike Welch here, and I just have to share this story, man, because it's the craziest thing, and I hope you don't take offense to it. Not that you should or would, but so there was this event that our kid's school was putting on, and it was one of those things where it was like, my wife was like, should I do it? Should I not do it? And I'm like, listen, they're asking for a donation of $100. Like, let's just do it. Yeah. Right. And she told me the story about how she was like there at the school and you really didn't want to do it. She's like, come on, Mike, you got to do it. And kind of encouraged you to come out that day. I think when we woke up that morning, we immediately regretted that decision because it was freezing cold out. And, but it was like a little spooky run or something for the kids. And anyway, so you had a handful of parents that were business owners that, came out to support the kids, and they set up these booths. I mean, there were probably only 6 of us. Anyway, so we're setting up the booth. I've got the mortgage lending stuff. My wife has the real estate stuff. And then we've got Mike, and he's setting socks out onto the table, and he's got this rack where he's like hanging socks, and I'm like the least judgmental motherfucker out there, but I'm sitting there and in my mind I'm just going like, man, this guy, what does he do? He goes to these little events and like sets out socks, and I'm like, how much could he really be making selling socks, So then we strike up a conversation, and he's like, oh yeah, we were one of the top sellers in Amazon. We sold, 700,000 pairs of socks last year. And I'm just like, holy shit, dude. Like this is a totally different individual that I'm talking to. And so from there, I was immediately just really intrigued. I think, especially over the last couple of years as the mortgage industry has shifted with such high interest rates. I think it's, I've been doing it for 20 years, but I'm an entrepreneur, man. So I'm always looking and thinking of other things, So I was just fascinated by it. And anyway, kudos to you, man. I look forward to you sharing the story. But for those that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about Mike and where you came from and who you are.
Sure. Yeah, so president of Lovely Socks. Lavely is owned by a corporation. I use the term lightly. We're just an S corp, but that company's Platinum Elephant. So I'm the CEO of that company. But Lavely is the brand, and as you described, we sell novelty socks with graphic designs on the sides and kind of witty sayings on the soles, and been doing that for, this is my 8th year. And, I never would have pictured myself selling novelty socks, but, we'll get into the story of how I got there. But it's the kind of thing where, I could be selling anything. If it's going to work, I can get behind it. I do enjoy it quite a bit. I think, designing and selling socks it's fun. I love my team, but it works. And it really worked on Amazon, and it just keeps pulling me back in. I can't get away from it, and it's not a bad thing at all. But
what were you doing before this business, though?
A total different life. My brother and I co-owned a retail shipping store downtown Denver, and my first taste of Amazon, oddly, was all the Amazon returns that came into my store. And so one way we'd make money is we'd just charge customers $1 or $2 to accept their Amazon returns. So it was a convenience business. We did other things, would ship out on customers' behalf, but the biggest part of the business towards the end before I sold that company was we'd just get like hundreds and hundreds of these Amazon returns. And I just started to think like it was a real taste of the volume of Amazon. And that was my introduction to it. And so, that industry changed. The retail shipping industry totally changed. Customers could do it, for themselves at home, print their own labels. So that went bye-bye. And so my brother and I we sold it to a UPS store down the street. But that was fun.
But so retail shipping, you mean,
so
you'd have clients in different industries kind of come to you saying, hey, I need you to take care of the shipping?
Pretty much, yeah. We were in a commercial building in like right on 16th Street. And so it was the convenience model. You know, you could go to the post office to get your shipping done, but these were kind of, you know, corporate types that wanted to make sure that their package was handled by, you know, people that cared. We charged a premium rate, but they knew that if anything went wrong with their package, they would come see Mike, and Mike would figure it out. And we all hate, you know, going to the post office for an hour and a half just to send out a little package. So it was a convenience-based model.
Tell me about it, man. Like I recently sold a few things on eBay, and they give you that like free shipping label. Yeah. And I just automatically, I read it, and I'm like, oh, UPS. I go to the UPS store by my house, and like, no, this is USPS. I'm like, oh, crap. So going to USPS, and I'm just a totally different caliber of an experience, right? It's like the government versus like a fast-paced, privately owned company.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, nobody likes going to the post office anymore. It's just, and it's time. You know, what are you willing to spend to save an hour and a half? You're a busy guy. You're really going to go sit in the post office line for an hour and a half? You got stuff to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, your time's worth more than that.
Exactly right.
So, so interesting. All right. So you did that. Did you dissolve the company or you sold it?
Just sold it. Okay. Basically the UPS store kind of just bought us to kill us. They absorbed our customers. I don't know how many of them actually, you know, went down the street to the UPS store, but I would suspect some of them did. We also had mailboxes, would rent out PO boxes, which still to this day is a great moneymaker. If you have, you know, the right location, just people want to have a PO box, especially nowadays when people are starting their own businesses. They don't want their own personal address associated with the business. It's great for, you know, young entrepreneurs starting businesses to have a PO box, a little bit of protection.
It's also such small real estate.
Right.
Yeah. And you can charge, how much do you charge for a PO box?
You know, anywhere from $50 a month up to, you know, $200 depending on the size of it and the level of service. You know, some customers would scan their mail and send it to them. They didn't even have to come down. You know, I operate in, my company right now operates in Europe, and we have a PO box that it's basically our physical address in the EU to be, you know, incorporated there. We have that model, and so it has great utility in business. Just a simple PO box.
I mean, like, see, what goes through my mind is like, okay, how do you figure out who to even contact in Europe to figure that out? How can I trust it's that what's being received is like legit? I don't know.
You don't really. I mean, that's part of the fun for it for me is figuring that stuff out. Okay, just building a network. You know, you run into some bad people, and I have. But it's just trial and error, and hopefully you win more than you lose on that front.
I want to talk about pivoting because here you have this business. You're starting to see all these Amazon packages coming in going, dude, something's up with this Amazon thing. Like, I'm going to figure this out. You realize that shipping wasn't really maybe what you had hoped it would be, or you saw it maybe as a dying industry a little bit where you were going to be absorbed by bigger companies. And but I mean, it's pretty admirable, dude, like, because it is difficult when you're used to doing something for so long to pivot, because it's like you're breaking away from comfort, from what you know, and yet you managed to do it. And you always hear these stories about these like little random occurrences, right, that were like the aha moment that caused somebody to go and start some other more successful business, and in your case, Lavely.
So, the retail shipping store was actually a pivot away from what I wanted to be doing. It was an opportunity arose for me to get business ownership experience, but the industry I wasn't in love with retail shipping. It was an opportunity, and if there's one kind of consistent theme in my life, it's just I've taken any opportunity that's presented itself, and I've just given it everything I have, and I've just always believed that it would lead to something. Like in this case, I got great business ownership experience. The first time I really truly owned a business with inventory and a customer-facing side, and that was great. But I pivoted out of a previous career of branding and marketing and went into the retail shipping store to get that business ownership experience because I knew I wanted to marry the two ultimately. So I stepped out of marketing. Before that, I was doing like brand management and working in advertising, and then I shifted out of that like kind of corporate culture. And went into the retail shipping scene to get that other side of the business ownership piece, the actual, ins and outs of running a business, looking at financials. And so I did that as long as it was profitable. And then as soon as the profitability slipped, I pivoted back out of it and went into, what I'm doing now. And it was luck. Big part of my career has been luck, as it is in most successful people's career path. Luck is a big part of it. Hard work is certainly part of it, but luck is huge. And I got lucky in the sense that a business was for sale right around the time when I was needing to get out of the current business. It was an Amazon seller-based business. Mom and pop, a husband and wife couple were looking to sell a reasonably successful small Amazon seller-based company. And I found that listing online, and the timing worked out. And we met, we liked each other, and we did it.
So were you just online looking at businesses on a regular basis, like on a
pretty much
Biz Buy Sell or one of these websites?
Yeah, and looking at franchises too. I actually had owned a franchise before the retail shipping store, and that was I was basically a digital marketing consultant for a Canadian franchise called We Simplify the Internet. They're still around, a great company. But before the retail shipping store, I was an independent consultant. So that gave me exposure to the franchise world. And so I've always just been looking for businesses to sell. I wanted to pick up something that was already working and try and put my own, twist on it or brand on it. And that's what happened with Platinum Elephant, the company I own now.
So you said something a second ago. You said you've looked for opportunities and then you've just sort of gone all in on it.
Yeah.
But how do you know, right? Because you could go all in on something and be running in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like how was that? Is that just a gift that you have? Was it just instinctual, or was there something more to that made you know it was a path worth putting everything into?
It's a great question. I don't know the answer. What I would say is that I believe that I'm going to be very successful one day. I feel like I've already achieved some level of it, but I feel blessed to have any opportunity that success is even remotely possible. And I know that even if it's not the right opportunity and it's not like the final step, I'm going to learn something along the way by giving it my all. And if I have a decent opportunity and I give everything I have to it, at least I'll be able to say to myself, well, it wasn't the right opportunity, but it didn't fail because I didn't try hard enough. And that allows me to sleep at night, right? And it's like you got one chance at life. Opportunities come in various forms. You got to just take what's in front of you and give it your all. And sooner than later, you'll probably know if it's not the right one and you'll need to pivot. But hey, I could have gotten out of my current business 4 or 5 times, but I just decided to stick with it, and I'm super thrilled I did.
That's cool, man.
What
was it? So you found this business that was online that had some sort of marketing component that you realized was valuable. Yeah. But what was missing from that you knew you could bring value to, or what is it that they weren't doing? Yeah. And also, when you're sitting there talking to that individual, how do you not, I would imagine there's some element of like, dude, this is a gold mine if these people only knew, right? But how did you figure that out and navigate that?
It might sound kind of lame, but it really came down to financials. I looked at the financial statements and I saw that the business was netting at a certain net profit that I wanted to have at that time. I knew that the business, it wasn't particularly complex. It was, all computer-based and largely dependent on, keywords and ranking, which I had already had some familiarity with by being a digital marketing consultant. It was definitely a level up. I knew I had to learn quite a bit, and part of the deal with buying the business was, hold back of profits in exchange for passing on the knowledge of the business. And so we set that up in the deal. And so I knew I was going to learn, and I knew that I had a certain time period to learn. And the business was pretty juicy. It had a series of relatively successful products on Amazon, and so I knew I had a runway. I knew I had time with the existing products where I could be a novice and learn, and the business would kind of run itself for a little while before I could take over. What could I bring to the business? I had no idea. I honestly didn't really know that I had anything transferable. I was, I really didn't at the time. So I swung for it. I just figured I could make it work. I just believed that I could.
That's good. I think belief is such an important component, that I think a lot of people overlook it.
Yeah.
And it's when you have a genuine belief in something, like a conviction in something.
Yeah.
Like what you're willing to do and go through and work towards is pretty remarkable. But I think there's so much noise now.
Yeah.
It's hard to know what to believe in. And we have a lot of people telling us what to believe in and what we should or shouldn't believe. But where was this, like an obscure business that you had to like look for, or was it pretty widely promoted? Like, were there a lot of people they were talking to about this, or did you sort of did they not advertise it well? I mean,
I think it was just timing. It's right place, right time. I think we contacted the business owners like immediately after they listed it, and I was specifically looking for an online based business. I didn't necessarily want a physical space at the time, even though now I do have a physical space. I didn't want it at the time, but I was looking specifically for an online based business. So I was using like an online business broker. And so we had looked at others, but this one just made sense. And the Amazon piece was a big part of it. Nothing obscure. No, it was just timing, really. It was just, I call it fate, if you will,
Yeah, but you gotta play to win.
No, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if you ain't looking,
Yeah.
you're not going to find it. So
Totally.
That's cool, man. All right. So now you negotiate this purchase, this acquisition. You buy the company.
Yep.
When did Lavely come into play?
Lavely, so the company that I bought at the time, they had like 4 brands, and the whole model of Amazon, it's changed
Was
a
it
lot.
all Amazon FBA that they were doing?
100%
Okay.
Amazon FBA. And so they had 4 brands. One of them was Haute Soiree, and it was like bachelorette party supplies, successful in its own right.
Okay.
Another one was Lavely, and at the time it was, the main owner of the true owner operator, she had created this brand Lavely, and it was kind of just in its infancy. A rough logo, and I think it had one product under it, and it was just kind of like this quirky name, and it didn't have really anything going on in it, but they owned the rights to it. It was trademarked. It kind of had the groundwork laid, so it was just this opportunity. It was like this blank. It was like this shell that I could grow into, if that makes sense, already set up, and so. How we moved socks into it, that's a long story, but I'll give you the short piece of it. Haute Soiree, the brand I just mentioned, had a sock, like a kind of a white combed terry ankle sock, and that sock on the bottom said, "If you can read this, bring me some wine." So on one sock, "If you can read this," and the other, "Bring me some wine." Well, that sock for like 18 months was bouncing in and out of number 1 for the keyword gift on Amazon, which anyone who operates on Amazon knows what kind of a win that is. That to own that real estate, it was like printing money for 2 or 3 years, and so that I never really loved the brand Haute Soiree because I couldn't personally relate to it. I'm not a bachelorette, Again, I could sell anything, and I did. I sold plenty of 6-foot inflatable penises and purple and pink penis straws, and that's a whole nother story.
Bachelorette,
yeah,
that's immediately came to mind.
No, they successfully sold a lot of those products for a while, but after a while, Chinese competition comes in, or any competition, not just Chinese, but. And it's hard for a product to really last for too long on Amazon. Even if it's a great product, it's ultimately going to be sold for less, cheaper, or better, made better. So that brand kind of fizzled. But Lavely was, I loved the name. It just stuck with me, and I basically said, well, how can we make this simple terry sock better? How can we make it appeal to a broader audience? And I thought, well, instead of having it an ankle sock, let's run it up the calf. Let's make it a longer sock that opens up the real estate for graphics, design, and then, improve the quality of the materials, and just bring on some amazing graphic designers that can test the limits of what can be put on a sock. And then couple that with trying to be as witty and funny as possible with the saying that goes along with the graphics. So, and then we folded that into Lavely. It was, again, just like, this wasn't my intention. It just kind of happened. I didn't really think too much about it. I just rolled with it, and it worked.
No, it worked out.
It worked.
Were you exposed to a lot of the connections for where you were purchasing the raw material through the acquisition of the business? Or was that like a whole new venture where you're like, I have to fly to China, I guess, or wherever?
The previous owners of the company, they were in with a network. They were part of a high volume Amazon seller masterminds. And so they were pretty tapped in. Okay. And I leveraged that network in the early days, and one of the ways I leveraged it was this guy named Sean Hart. He's a pretty big name in the Amazon business, just the marketing world in general, and he ran a sourcing trip in China. And so he would host people that were aspiring to source products in China. He would host them in Shanghai, in a town called Yiwu specifically. And that's just like a large, small commodities market in China. It's basically where everything small, physical products is sold, just this giant market city. And so he would fly people in, and it would just be this pressure cooker on how to source, how to meet with Chinese businesses, how to walk the market, negotiate, prices. And so I flew out to that, and I ultimately met my current manufacturer there. He was Sean's kind of partner. So Sean was the connection between U.S. and China. He was kind of the intermediary to say, how do you interact with this culture? And then my friend David, he was the Chinese manufacturer counterpart, this Chinese man. And so that's how I met my main manufacturer in China. So the network was key. Leveraging that was pretty instrumental in my early success.
But you didn't have to know Chinese.
Oh, I still don't. I still don't know a single word. But with today's apps and technology, I mean, I can send him what he needs to see in English, and he translates it. And then same, he could send me Chinese, and I translate it to English. We talk in English because over 8 years, I think he's had to learn it. But with today's technology, I mean, even when I was in China, you can put your phone up to a sign and have Google Translate just translate the world for you. So it's crazy.
So over time, you develop some trust with this relationship.
Absolutely.
But, in the beginning of this thing, how are you? Like, what does your day-to-day look like?
Mostly in the early period, I was so focused on Amazon rank, that we would just constantly type in the keywords that we were wanting to rank for and physically looking at where our product fell on the page in Amazon. And it's a very, very hands-on approach, and you can only do that for so long until you have a product portfolio that's so large you can't do it anymore. And we weren't doing it for every product, but mostly it was just working on rank, because as any Amazon seller knows, you live and die by your rank. If you're not ranked appropriately, you might as well not even sell on Amazon at all, in my opinion.
Well, I was going to say, there's got to be 1,000 people that are selling socks, right?
Thousands. And one of them is Amazon, so we compete directly with Amazon. Amazon has partnered with a couple of our competitors and big American companies. Basically, they buy their product and handle all the marketing. So I'm competing with Chinese competitors and competing with Amazon itself, which, is kind of crazy.
So, but how are they playing fair with that? Wouldn't they just rank themselves at the top every single time?
They, I don't know what I want to say on if I will say Amazon probably for the most part plays fair for the most part, but the big part of their business is some of their own brands that they sell and the brands that they are suppliers for. Basically, they
want people to think they're winning.
They're competing on their own marketplace as much as we are, but the thing is they don't have to spend money on their ads. That simple truth keeps me up at night. I spent almost $1 million on Amazon ads last year. I spent more than $1 million on Amazon ads last year. And I know that Amazon can achieve the same real estate without spending $1. Mm-hmm. So already they're ahead. No matter what I do, they're ahead. And whenever I open support cases with Amazon, I'm forced to submit my vendor information. They won't even talk to me unless I hand over, and if they lose inventory, I have to supply that. You have to supply purchase orders or invoices to prove that you own the inventory. So they kind of have you with your pants down. But the marketplace is so big and so juicy that even if Amazon takes a big piece of the pie, there's still enough to go around, at least for me, And we're also playing off Amazon too. We're doing the wholesale thing too. So,
but if you don't have, I would imagine that Amazon, the play with Amazon is volume, right?
Totally
what
volume.
You're trying to accomplish.
That's a strategy. Volume is a strategy. I ran with that strategy for the first 6 years. I'm actually not running the volume strategy right now for the first time since I've owned the business. I'm pulling back from that. But if you want to grow on Amazon, it's almost like you have to go full speed 100% of the time. If you're not trying to rank to be number one, in my opinion, it's not worth it. Mm-hmm. Because if you're not on first page, you're going to miss 80% of the views.
Sure.
If you're not on the top 50% of page 190, and if you're not the top 3, to me, maybe it's just my competitive nature. If I don't have a chance to be number one for something, I don't know that I really want to play. If I don't have a chance, even just a small chance, I don't want to play.
But let's say there's 3 guys that are doing exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
Everybody's thinking the same way. So who wins? Who gets ranked first?
Ultimately, I hope that it comes down to the product itself. I think when you look at our product compared to our competitors,
Just like most relevant to the search?
Most relevant, but also just the vibrancy of the design, the colors, the wittiness of the saying.
Okay.
I'd like to think that we're kind of the innovators, the leaders in that area, and that the competitors are kind of looking to us as to what should come next for them. And we launch products, and 3-4 weeks later, a Chinese competitor will have almost the same exact sock on Amazon, just right there next to ours. And so, but ultimately, who wins really on Amazon is, are you willing to pay to present your product enough times to get the views that you need, to get the clicks that you need to ultimately rank for first position? And so it comes down to money. Can you...
What about reviews? Does that play a part?
Huge, especially on Amazon. That's a review marketplace. And so, yes, reviews are critical. As long as you can sustain the total.
Do you manipulate the reviews at all?
No, I mean, so there are ways to get reviews, inauthentic ways to get, black hat, if you will, techniques. Sure. We don't engage in that. A lot of people do. A lot of foreign companies do. They just don't care. There's no risk for them. But Amazon has taken quite a good stance on false reviews, and I'm happy to see that. But I think just the quality of reviews, not how many you have. Quantity helps, but having above 4.5 stars on Amazon is generally a good, winning ticket.
But you have a brand new product though.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't have any reviews necessarily.
Yeah.
But you've identified some keywords that you suspect are going to rank high.
Yeah.
And so you're just saying, hey, go all in. And are you anticipating really no profits in it, or losing money even just to get the name out there? And then is there a strategy to I don't know if it's called this with Amazon, but almost deplatform, you're trying to entice the consumer to be in love with your brand and just go to your website next time, right?
Yeah, to answer your question, the expectation is you're going to lose money for a while. And I think that's what separates a lot of successful Amazon sellers from those that never really made it, is they might have been on the cusp of greatness, but they just didn't stick with it for long enough. And I'll give a quick story of one of our products. One of our best-selling products, it says, I'd rather be golfing. And we were just gunning for gifts for men as a keyword, giant keyword on Amazon. especially around like Father's Day and of course Christmas. But we accidentally let the ads go hog wild. But you gotta continuously pay for it to have the opportunity to be seen. Because if it's not seen, no one's going to buy it, right? So
of course. It's all about how many eyeballs you have on it.
Totally.
Gosh, man. So how much of your day is spent just geeking out on like ad spend and that type of stuff?
Not so much anymore. We use AI to do quite a bit of it.
They have like a built-in AI thing?
That's just third-party companies that offer that as it's not ad management service, but they basically have tools that you can orchestrate. You can set parameters and, set your target ACOS, advertising, or average cost of sale, or your tacos. These are specific terms, but basically they're metrics that you can gauge the success of your advertising. And so you can basically tell it how to manage your ads. And so we have like 500 products, probably around 50 to 60,000 individual campaigns, keyword campaigns. And so no human can manage all that. So we use AI quite a bit. And but I don't do that so much anymore. I have one of my colleagues runs that department, if you will, the advertising side. Me, I'm managing the people. I'm thinking about ways to grow the brand, new products to launch, new marketplaces to tap into. As I said, we're branching out pretty hard into the wholesale space. We're getting into big box stores. And
tell me about that.
It's been fun. I brought on a director of sales who spent 30 years of his career at a major luggage retailer. I don't necessarily want to share too much more on that about his background, but suffice it to say, way too experienced of a guy to join our company. And I think a recruiter introduced him. It was kind of a mutual friend kind of thing, and he had done his career. He had made it. And so he saw our company and saw the potential in the product and liked me and said, I'll roll with this for a little while. And so we got this heavy hitter director of sales who really forced me to think outside of the box and take our eggs out of the Amazon basket. And he really brought a wealth of knowledge and experience and allowed us to present ourselves to these wholesale buyers because we weren't ready. I have no experience in that. And so
when you say wholesale buyers, are you talking about the business that runs out of the mall kind of thing?
Some, yeah.
Access product and have it in our shelves? Yeah.
So, for like chain stores, there will be buyers that, whether they're the buyer for the whole store, I'll give you an example, like a Dick's Sporting Goods. There might be like a camping gear buyer, or like a team sports buyer. There's buyers,
sure.
And so when we approach stores, you talk to certain specific buyers, and they're looking for certain things. They're looking for certain financials and to explain the business in terms that I had no experience talking about. I'm an Amazon guy, and I have no interaction with the customer. Basically, they don't really allow it. So here I am having to go to buyers and present the business using metrics and in a language that I didn't even know, and collateral documents. They need to see things, and so I was lost without him. And so he came in and gave his experience and brought that into the company, and that it's been a success right out of the gate. We've gotten we're in Shields, we're in Jack's, we're in a few Ace Hardwares. We got into Pure Hockey recently, so we're starting to hit pretty significant traction. So
I would imagine too, like you get into some of those anchor stores, like an Ace, as an example, and you can use that as leverage when you go.
Absolutely.
And so, do you have a sales team that goes and does this, or is it?
We have independent reps, so we're working with repping groups, and that's another thing my sales director turned me to. I would have hired inside sales reps, and I'm glad I didn't, because it's hard to sell anything these days, just with people not, wanting to leave the house, not going to trade shows. Working with these outside reps has been pretty crucial to our success and just networking and helping to grow the brand. So that's mostly how we're doing it. Our team will go to trade shows. So we're going to We're going to Las Vegas in July, and we'll set up a big booth and get ourselves in front of buyers and try our best to land big contracts. And
what's a big contract?
Well, normally it all starts small, but a big contract to me would maybe just be 5 or 6 styles, socks, in a giant store. I mean, that's kind of what happened with like Pure Hockey. They just took 4 styles, but they have, I think, almost 80 locations nationwide. So it's a small first buy, but you're getting your foot in the door.
Sure.
And you hope that...
Is that a similar trade-off, like where your margins are super thin initially?
Well, actually, for us, our margins on wholesale are better. Not wildly better, but Amazon, the cost of playing on FBA is killer. Now, they just significantly reduced the cost of fulfillment for our size of product, which is like a gift from God.
Why do you think
honestly?
they did
If I had to guess, I would say that they probably saw a slowdown in the category in products that were both a certain size and a certain price point, where the cost of fulfillment virtually left no room for profits, and that inevitably slowed down that segment. Everyone's going to leave. Yeah. And so they said, well, if we don't reduce the cost of doing business, there's going to be no business. And so they do make money off of the fulfillment, but they also make commission. And then perhaps most importantly, they make money off of the advertisements. And so, if people go away, they lose the fulfillment, they lose the commission on those sales, and they lose the ads. So they probably, for Amazon to lower the cost of anything, tells me that they had an oh shit moment. Like, sellers are abandoning ship.
But that's got to be tough too, because how do you balance a big decision like that? Because that's going to cost them billions of dollars probably, right?
Yeah.
I mean, initially.
Yeah.
Initially. Probably more than that if people left and there's a mass exodus of sellers, right? But now all of a sudden they have people that are like, oh, it's a blessing, like you just said, right? It's a blessing from God.
Well, I think at the end of the day, I think for a long period of time, Amazon used the profits it was earning from small sellers like myself to build their supply chain, to build their infrastructure, to deliver products to neighborhoods. And you see these Amazon... 3 or 4 years ago, all of your Amazon stuff was delivered by UPS, but now they have their own planes, they have their own trucks, they have their own infrastructure, and I would like to think that I helped pay for those trucks.
Yeah, they're kidding.
And so they're I think they're largely electric, so there's cost savings there, and they've paid for those trucks, that they own that now, and so I think they're at a point where their cost of fulfilling is probably lower now than it was in the past. And they made a killing during the pandemic. I mean, let's be honest. I think they were up 30, 40, even 50% for the 2 years where the pandemic was at. That's where people got products. And they're not unhappy. they're doing just fine.
Yeah.
So.
Dude, all right. So I'm going to kind of take this in a little bit of a different direction.
Sure.
But, I know what it's like to start a business, to grow it, to be all in and have it be super consuming. Are you talking like, has your time investment changed at all from the beginning, or are you still running, 1,000 miles an hour, working long hours? Like,
I've pulled back quite a bit, and I've got 3 kids now, 3 young kids, 3 under 6. So I don't have the luxury to be gung-ho, and if I did go gung-ho and I had to still go home after hours and be the dad I want to be, I wouldn't have the energy to give either of it, any of it, everything I need to give it. So I have pulled back quite a bit by, it's necessary for me to. And I'm glad that I've chosen to have a family, because I was running pretty hard for a while, and I burned out a few times, and I haven't burned out in a while, and I have my family and my wife and that support structure to thank.
So it sounds like she was supportive through the process.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
What were there any times? I mean, you always hear stories of guys, this overnight success, right? That took 10 years to happen. But were there any moments where you were just like, kind of living in fear, where you were just like, you didn't know what was going to happen. How the hell am I going to make this work? How am I going to pay my bills? What am I going to tell my wife?
Yeah.
Were there any moments like that as you were working on this?
Every single day of my life. I have not had one day since I've owned this or any other business where I'm not fundamentally terrified that this thing's going to blow up.
Yeah.
It's just so much of my identity is tied to my success as a businessman, but also a father, and part of being a father is providing, and that
for sure
comes from the success of your business and how good of a parent you are. And so, yeah, I'm terrified every day that Amazon's going to shut me down, or I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. You've probably heard of it, the whole imposter syndrome that we as entrepreneurs get. Anybody can get it, not just entrepreneurs. You find yourself in a situation where things are going right and you say, did I just get lucky? Is it working because of X, Y, and Z and not because of me? Are people going to find me out? Like, I think about that every day. I'm terrified of it. Yeah.
How do you lean into that and how, or not lean into it? Like, how do you manage that? And then also, like, there have been moments for me where it's like, I know there's something going on within the business that it's like, I don't, on one hand, I want to share it with my wife because I want that support. I want that, like, it's going to be okay. Don't worry. Like, I want that, comfort, I guess. But then there's this other side of me that's like, okay, how granular do I really want to get with this with my family and with my wife? Because not their fault, but maybe they just don't understand the intricacies of the situation. And so it's like, how do you balance that, right? Where it's like you kind of have this monkey on your back, and you're running away from fear every single day, but how much do you let in and how much do you kind of keep close to the vest?
Well, I think it depends on the actual thing that you're going through. First and foremost, I'll say this is a personal choice. I don't want to bring everything home to my wife. I'll pick and choose. For no other reason. I want my wife to believe and think that I'm strong and I can handle it. I tap into kind of my mentors and my support group to handle kind of the more granular stuff. But, big decisions, personnel decisions, I rely on my wife for like the people stuff because, I think women just in general are more like emotionally intelligent and she does a really good job of helping me navigate the decisions when it comes to managing people. But the granular stuff, it's tough because she's not so involved with the day-to-day. I don't know. Like I said, it depends on what it is we're dealing with. How do I lean into my fear? Your previous question, that for me, despite being afraid every day, it's incredible fuel to prove not just to the world, but most importantly myself, that I deserve to be here and I can be here and I can fight. And I need that almost. I think that's what drives a lot of entrepreneurs, and I would guess it drives me, is that you're constantly trying to prove to yourself that you are someone. You can leave a mark in this world. You can hopefully be remembered, and most importantly, my kids can look to me as a role model and to say, this is what it looks like to get up every morning and battle, even though you're shit scared that it's going to implode or you don't know if you're doing the right thing, but you're showing your kid that you're just getting up every day and fighting no matter what. That's the most important thing for me.
Yeah. There's a guy that I follow that I really admire. Ed Milet is his name, and he's got one of the top business podcasts out there, but he always talks about how it's caught, not taught. And so, if you look at a successful person, like you'll see really overweight people that are successful. You'll see people that are really in shape that are successful. You'll see people all walks of life that have a morning routine, that don't have a morning routine, that don't go to work until noon, but they work late into the night. And you'll see people that are up at 3 a.m. And so, do you have any kind of daily routine or habits that you stick to that you have found helpful on this journey?
Daily exercise as best as I can. That for me is instrumental. Just the part of getting the mind strong. I think having your body be strong is critical. I mean, if I work out in the morning before work, I have a killer day every time. I've never worked out in the morning and not had a great day. Period. Things will go wrong, but the way you approach it, if you've worked out, your brain is just ready for it. So workout is key. I don't keep a very traditional schedule, and I love that. Sometimes I'll work till midnight, and I do really good work after hours. Sometimes I'll get into the office at 9 a.m. and I'll stare at my screen. I can't get my brain to get going. I can't do a schedule. I think routine is generally pretty good for me, but too much routine, I start to feel a little bit too caged in. Sure. I like the flexibility to be able to let my mind wander and let creativity kind of ebb and flow naturally. And so I don't like too much structure throughout my day. I couldn't last in the corporate structure for that main reason, just the 9 to 5 every day. I do great work after hours. That doesn't work in the corporate world, come like something about 9 o'clock, my brain turns on and I start to think critically. And my biggest ideas usually come
9
then.
PM
9 p.m. 9 p.m.
After 9 p.m.
I don't know what it is. It's maybe just the stresses of the day that you finally are at a quiet point, you're in bed, and then I start to think about that big decision.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
There's some level of energy that I get. I'm like quiet. I can let everything go from the day.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you say that.
It's a great time to think.
Do you ever do you schedule deep work into your calendar?
I sometimes, I do. But boy, my calendar is such a mess. We're a small team, and so we're wearing a ton of hats. Mm-hmm. And my day-to-day, honestly, I'm doing too much like putting fires out, not enough working on myself and my business. But it's working for now because the brand and the product is strong. But yeah, I try to, a couple times a week, I'll just block off a couple of hours where I don't even really put an agenda into it. I just block the time. Just no answering of the phone, I don't look at my emails. It's just give myself time to just be present and let the thoughts kind of flow in. Maybe that's not deep work, but in a way it is.
No, for sure.
Because you're blocking everything out.
Yeah, absolutely. You're letting yourself be creative. And so much of being an entrepreneur, in my opinion, is like there's a lot of science to it. Mm-hmm. There's also a lot of art to it. Yeah. Right? And you have to give yourself that ability to be creative. I think that is the spirit of the entrepreneur. Right?
Absolutely.
Is getting excited about being creative. And so for you, your deep work is likely, like you had mentioned, thinking about new brands you could add to the portfolio. And, how to grow and how to go into different markets and verticals. And that takes creativity. There's an amazing book. I just finished reading it by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. He wrote 10X is easier than 2X. And I would encourage you to pick it up and read it. Yeah. But he kind of talks about he talks about a lot in the book, but one of the things is the 80-20 principle where, hey, 20% of what you're actually doing is producing 80% of the income. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Then there's the other 80% of the shit that you're working on that's only producing 20% of the income.
Absolutely.
So it kind of begs the question, well, then if 80% of everything you're doing is only producing 20% of the results, why are you spending that much time on it? A lot of times it's out of fear. Yeah. And so he takes you on this sort of like mental processing through the book of how do you eliminate the 80%, knowing you're going to have to step into that fear because the 80% is like the stuff that makes you comfortable. It's the low hanging fruit. It's your bread and butter, so to speak. Right. But really, how do you really niche down into the 20% and step into faith and do that with your deep work? And so this concept of 10X is easier than 2X, if you think about your current, we'll just use income as an example, but your current income or current business revenue, to 2X it, to double that, typically it's a formula that involves more output. right? It's like more phone calls, more hours, more of the thing that you're doing already. But if you were to actually 10x your results, now it forces you to be so creative, because the reality is there's probably only one or two things you could do on the planet that would actually 10x those results. And so his whole thing is like, that's what you have to spend time looking for. And it becomes more of a qualitative approach to the business instead of a quantitative one.
Sure.
So I don't know, maybe you'll get something out of that.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. Yeah, absolutely. The 80-20 thing it's spot on. From a product perspective, 20% of the products generate 80% of the juice, and I'm stuck with those other 80%. I don't want to let them go when I should.
But is it so but when you're selling something online, I would think that there's almost like you have a need to have more, like if we're just using the 80-20 concept, right? Okay. Yeah. You have 10 products. Yeah. Right. Well, to me, it's almost like you need 10, because if you only had 2, people might get bored or not feel like they have enough options. So it's almost like this lost leader, but it's presenting an image of a shop that has more options. I don't know.
Socks like ours that are primarily bought as gifts, the more people you can appeal to, the more customers you're going to get. And if the idea is that if you attract just that first sale, if you get somebody that's looking for a gift for their dad and they find a golf sock, my dad loves to golf. Well, suddenly you've clicked into our listing, you see that golf sock, you click in, and then you see 30 other products. And then you think, oh, well, that's a cool sock. I might buy that for my friend. And then you're like, oh, I love to camp. Here's a camping sock, and it snowballs. So yeah, it's having more products definitely allows you to appeal to a broader audience, and that's a big part of our strategy on Amazon. We use variations, which they're mostly grouped together by theme, and so it's built by design to kind of go after a specific type of buyer and then offer them as many what we think might be applicable socks to that, either that keyword group or that even that buying period or that event that they're buying for. So yeah, the more you have, the better. There's a upper limit where you just have too many and you've bought too much inventory and you're screwed in that sense. And I've been there before. But when you're shifting from e-commerce to B2B, it's especially important to have a big collection, because you might be selling to a small specialty store that only sells fishing stuff. If you only have one fishing sock, they're not just going to buy one fishing sock and put it in their store. If you have 4 or 5, then suddenly you have a collection. So that's where it becomes really important to have variety. And yeah, it takes a while to build up a big product portfolio, and it's tough. And you got to cancel a lot of designs you love, and that's a whole journey in and of itself. Yeah.
Dude, so this is super interesting, man. Like, I could talk to you forever. Yeah. Where can people find you?
Find me personally? Well, you can find our company, lavely.com. I'm on LinkedIn. People can certainly reach out to me. I love talking to entrepreneurs, listening to their businesses, helping. I just love to help people think about business. I love talking about business, even if it's not my own. I thoroughly believe that every business idea can work if it's just done right. I don't think there's any real bad ideas. I mean, there are some, but most. I love when someone tells me about a business idea that they're generally into. I get probably as much excitement out of that idea as they do. So I encourage people to reach out if they want. LinkedIn's a great way to do it.
That's awesome. You think you'll ever go into coaching?
I'd like to one day when this thing is hung up. Maybe. When
you have 6 kids.
When I have 6 kids. No, that's definitely not. I can guarantee you that's not happening. 3, we're done. I'd maybe sit on some boards, advisory boards, what could be interesting, one-offs, consulting. I'd love to help people however they need it.
Mike, man, thank you so much,
Darik, thank
brother.
you. Yeah, this was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Turn that loss to a check. Every time that I see a limit, I push right past it. Don't care if you got here first, the one to win is the last one standing. Say my life is like luck. Nah.